Hi, this is Sarah from Sassy, and today I am bringing you a recommendation video on feminist reads. So, feminism to me encompasses a wide variety of different topics, and so I chose 10 books that kind of, I guess, fit what I consider to be feminism. So let's hop right in. So first up we have the quintessential feminist novel, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I first came across this story and I kind of didn't have too much interest in it, but I was intrigued because, you know, it is listed all over Goodreads as the greatest feminist novel of all time, which it is. Like, this is amazing. It's so awesome. This was written in the 1980s during the second wave of feminism, and it can also be read as a satire piece because a lot of what the second wave feminist movement wanted was for reproduction rights. So in a way they did get reproduction rights, but not in the way that they wanted, and it became a nightmare. So it's really fascinating, and I just like to look at this book from different angles. It does fit a satire angle as well as, you know, a horror story, as well as a cautionary tale. And I think that this one is a novel that will be read for hundreds of years and it'll still fit the puzzle, sadly. Because at the end of the book, well, guess what? Women are still discredited. It never ends. Next book is Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. So this, I think, is the only book by a man I have on this list. Of course, Stephen King. He's freaking amazing. He's also pretty well known for being a more liberal speaker. He's definitely what I consider somebody on the feminist side. And not only that, but this book only focuses solely on one voice, one narrative. It follows Dolores Claiborne, who is telling the story of why she killed her husband. And it is pretty remarkable. So the way that it's written, she's in an interview, an interrogation, and every time somebody asks her a question, you don't know what their question is, but you get her response. So it is only just her talking, which I can't think of a more feminist novel to write. I mean, this novel is solely based off of one perspective and one voice, and it's really empowering, and it's a remarkable story. I loved it. The next book is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. I love this cover. This is a fantasy story, so I, wanted to throw in something different. This is a fantasy story that focuses on a girl named Sarcha, who is the youngest of 6 siblings. She's the 7th child, and all of her siblings are brothers, her older brothers, and they all protect her, and it's so beautiful. And what happens is her father ends up marrying a woman who happens to be a sorceress, and she casts a spell on the brothers, turning them into swans, and she is given the task of sewing shirts for them out of stalwart, which is a incredibly sharp, poisonous plant. And my favorite thing about this novel, well, not my favorite thing is her romance with Red, because it just warms my heart. But my favorite thing that Marillier does with this novel is her portrayal of rape and the aftermath. Sarcha isn't able to communicate, and a lot of women don't want to communicate that, and I feel like it was just done so tastefully, and you could really feel that sorrow and that just the emptiness inside. So I just feel like this is probably the most feminist fantasy novel I've read, and I just want more people to read it because it's amazing. The next book I have to recommend is a poetry collection, The Sweeping the World by Storm, Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. This one has a lot of great feminist poetry. Let's see if I can find the one about, okay, this is a really good example. It says, hair, if it was not supposed to be there, would not be growing on our bodies in the first place. And it goes on to say, we are at war with what comes most naturally to us. And then it has a little picture of a woman with flowers to represent hair, and it's a really good novel for feminism, just for really discussion. I highly recommend it, even though I wasn't a huge fan of it. I know people will get a lot out of it. The next book I have to recommend is Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. I really like this one because if you look closely, you notice the lipstick in the shape of gun bullets. Super cool. This is really a huge feminist novel because it's a satire piece on beauty and what it means to be a woman. It's really diverse. It has a black main character, an Indian main character, I think a Chinese main character as well. It's been a couple years since I read this, but great diversity. There's also a lesbian main character, and there's definitely a transgender beauty queen, which is super cool. So I just think that this novel, it really tackles feminism from all angles, and it's pretty awesome. The next book I have to talk about is The Duff by Cody Keplinger. So The Duff is really interesting because this takes a spin on your typical YA romance contemporary. Bianca is dealing with a lot in her personal life, so she decides to take on having a friend with benefit, and I just think this is a really good discussion topic, especially for younger readers. And Bianca's a really empowering character. I really enjoyed her, and this is a pretty graphic book for YA when it tackles subjects of sex, but I think this is really important for young readers because as a young woman, it is up to you to decide whether you want to have sex at a young age or whether you want to wait, or whatever you choose to do. So I feel like one of these books could help a person decide whether, what they feel more comfortable with. The next book I have to recommend is a historical novel that is fictional. It's a fictional account based off of a real historical figure. It is Z, a novel of Zelda Fitzgerald by Therese Ann Fowler. This is based off of S. Scott Fitzgerald's wife. I think Zelda Fitzgerald is a very feminist woman. She is from the time of the suffragettes during the Lost generation. She wasn't a suffragette, but her best friend, Sarah Hart, who is a huge character in here, is. I actually got my hair cut because I love the flapper generation, and I love a lot of what they stand for in the movement. And, I just kind of wanted to do something fun, and I feel like cutting my hair was definitely an ode to all those who have fought for feminism. And not only that, but the really cool thing about this is it really shows what it was like to be a woman in the 20s and in the 30s as well, because a lot of people don't realize this, but Zelda was not only a gifted ballet dancer who was offered many roles in France, but she was also an amazing painter. You should look up some of her art. It is on Google Images. You can find it. She's pretty remarkable, but, as Scott Fitzgerald, he wasn't the best man, and he continually stomped down her difference of wanting to be trapped, and it led to her being put in a sanitarium, which eventually led to her death. It's a really tragic story, but it's history, so if you are a history buff, highly recommend. The next one I have to recommend, I recommend all this author's works, Gillian Flynn, because I feel like she's a really good writer to use as a reference for feminism, because most villains in our history of writing are old, crabby women who eat children or want revenge on children for some reason. But in this case, these are women who want revenge on men, want revenge on other women, and it's just really fascinating because it takes villainry into a new perspective. And also, these are great suspense novels, so you can get a lot out of this. And plus, Amy is the cool girl, the quintessential cool girl. And then the next book I have to recommend is Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan. This edition is beautiful. This is a really big book from the 60s. It was huge when it came out. It's my mom's favorite. It follows 3 women who eventually rise to fame in Hollywood. The first woman is a secretary in New York who does not want to get married, so she leaves her little tiny small coastal town to make it to New York so she could get a job. Then we have another woman who is a I never say the word right, but it's like a Vanderval. I think you know what I'm talking about if you know history and old Hollywood, but really interesting. And then there's another woman who she becomes like a porn star, and she had a lesbian relationship. So this novel really pushed some buttons in the time, and it's super good. The next one I have is AntiDarkened by Kristen White, essentially because, this is a historical take on what Vlad the Impaler would have been like if he was a woman. So those are the books that I recommend if you are looking for some feminist reads. and I'll see you down below in the comments. Bye!